The Bus Barns project was a site-specific dance theater performance event presented on June 9th and 10th, 2000. It honored the workers of the Vermont Transit Bus Repair Barns and opened the door to the site's new incarnation as affordable rental housing and space for startup businesses spearheaded by the Burlington Community Land Trust. The performances incorporated the 130-year-old history of these public transportation buildings and the stories of the men and women who work there. The project was about mobility, its effects on our lives, and the environmental and societal ramifications of our choice of public or private transportation. All was viewed through the lens of a contemporary dance theater performance. Motivating the dances were a series of conversations with the mechanics and drivers in their last months working for Vermont Transit. These stories gave direction for the movement language which explored the dynamics between constant movement versus stillness and distance versus closeness. The site has been in use since 1870, repairing, maintaining, and storing horse-drawn trolleys, electric streetcars, and buses. In 1929, Vermont Transit Company began as a locally owned business offering much-needed bus service to rural Vermont. In 1975, the business was sold to Greyhound. Since then, bus service in Vermont has slowly diminished. In August 2000, Greyhound closed the barns in Burlington, moved the maintenance operation to White River Junction, and in the process, 20 long-time employees lost their jobs.
Down in the dungeon, used to keep parts in these and your old parts. I was told at one time the trolley, that's where they house the trolley parts. Before this garage was ever here, all the way down to this building, there used to be like houses and buildings all the way up within almost touching the upstairs building on both sides. My grandfather, he was a custodian here many, many years ago when I was just a little guy. And he brought me in here, and I remember sitting in the bus seat and blowing the horn and driving the mechanics nuts.
This is the end of the road for this place. This is the end of these jobs for these men. The guy who did the video was the grandson of somebody who worked there, and his father worked there too, right? It was like this generations of families, and all of a sudden, because this is a small, struggling company, they get bought out by this huge company, and now they have to move there. And so now all these men are out of jobs. You know, it's no light thing that a company closes or gets bought out. I mean, in the news it's a blur, but it's a big deal. It's people's lives.
Give me that. Give it to me. Hannah Dennison, the choreographer of the Bus Barns project. And we're here in my studio 2 years after the project. I began talking with the Land Trust about this project in, I guess it was the fall of '99.
I'm Amy Demetrowitz and I work with the Burlington Community Land Trust. My title is Project Developer, and the Burlington Land Trust is developing the Bus Barn site into housing and commercial space.
The Burlington Community Land Trust and I have worked together for 2 other projects prior to the Bus Barns. I have come in and created a piece of art in the old building, making a bridge into the new renovated incarnation of the space.
What I really appreciated was the way that it really honored the people who have worked at that site for 40 years, some of them, and really honored how important the work that they've been doing is, and how this is an important part of their life history and has been so critical to the history of just Burlington in general. And I really appreciated that there were the couple days when I was there were a lot of workers who came and walked through the performance and sat down and went into the tent where they had the old photographs and newspaper articles and just flipped through them and just kind of were chatting about all the old days and telling really great stories. And I kind of had the great luck of getting there at a time when Ken Bissett, who's one of the oldest drivers, came to watch the performance, and sat down at a table with him and was able to hear all of his old stories about driving the buses around Burlington. And that was just really great for me to hear that and just feel how important this site is and how great these folks are.
So right at the beginning of the winter, we started working in here in the studio, and worked February and March on creating the material and starting to put it together.
Hi, Rob. We were like creating movement together improvisationally and figuring out different ways to put movement together. And out of that came the first movement for the Bus Barns project. One of Hannah's challenges for herself in this work was to actually be able to get closer with other dancers. There was quite a bit of touch in our improvisations in the Bus Barns project. Heads on shoulders and such. I would just start my phrase and Hannah would improvise around my phrase. We just did it over and over until the other person who was creating the second part of the phrase liked what they had. And so then suddenly there was a duet. And then we would do it the other way. So Hannah would dance and I would improvise and create something around her phrase. And then we would figure out how to string those 4 different pieces of information together.
1, 2, 3, 4. In the piece, I was one of the core dancers that collaborated and added some choreography and stuff into it. And I haven't done a lot of that in the past, so that was, for me, a real challenging experience. Plus, we had to learn it forward and backward and teach other people and work together and stuff.
All right. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing. 5, 6, 7.
The creation process is mostly what drew me to the project, and the opportunity to move with other people and to move a lot. When this project came about, I was really charged up about dancing and about performing, and I think it had been sort of a while since I'd had the opportunity to perform other than in showings or in short things.
I'm not a dancer. In my life, I have taught school and spent the bulk of my life having a dairy farm. And then for the last 10 years or so, worked as a therapist, working with men who've been arrested for domestic assault. And we worked on this weaving of this thing, which was my piece and her piece, and my part and her part became my part. And it became this other piece, this third piece. And I think we worked on that maybe for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, getting together for a couple of hours a week.
You want to think about this leg and this arm being very similar, so they're both coming around like that.
So these 10 different people got together with Hannah and created all this work, and then we all came together and learned everybody else's information. It was huge. It was a lot of work.
As we began to learn one another's parts and become increasingly comfortable with one another, and we broke off into other groups, and now there were 6 of us that were meeting on Tuesday evenings, and another 6 were meeting on Thursday evenings, and we were learning more of each other's work. It was great. It was just a wonderful process. So it was moving, but now it was moving in a community.
I decided to create a significant body of material with 7 other dancers that I then choreographed into 5 sections. And after each section was performed, we improvised with that specific material. Oftentimes, improvisation is more fun for the people who are doing it than the people who are viewing it. So I was interested in how to create improvisation that was almost edited as we went along. The choreographed aspect had a softness to it, and the improvisation had a definition to it. It seemed to be a really nice balance between remembering and reacting.
The most challenging for me was to be able to do the improvisation in a connected way with anybody else. I think I could improvise somewhat more readily if I knew that I had only myself at stake. But yet when I became close physically to other people, then I began to feel less comfortable. I immediately think about stillness. For some reason I think about stillness. That was a great moment when I don't remember exactly what it was. It was something that was tough. And Hannah said, I think, John, standing would be good. I think we just need someone standing. And I thought, I think just standing well will be good. This will be good. So I remember the improvisation in terms of the ability to just be.
I drove by those barns on my way to work for so many years. I taught at Hunt Middle School and then for many years at Burlington High School. I took that route and paid no attention. I think visiting the barns before we started the active part of the project and meeting the men who had worked there for 30 years, 35 years, 25, realizing it was an incredibly important place in the lives of these people who had worked there. And how could I have driven by it with such frivolity, I guess?
Jim, this is Abby Carter.
Hi, how do you do? Pleasure to meet you.
And this is Rob Coyer.
Hi, Rob.
And this is a microphone.
That's a microphone. Is it on?
Not until he turns
Turn it
on.
off.
When we went in to do the tour of the bus barns with Jim Raymond, I really got a sense of like how old the building was and how many different manifestations it's been through, and pointing out like the bricked in windows inside of the building, and telling us where the trolley cars were stored and things like that. I mean, just being there like physically had such an intensity to it.
What you doing, John? Oh, you're winding up your battery?
I'm
I'm looking for names on these beams.
I had been carrying around this dry academic image of historians, and John Thomas just blew that perception right out of the water. He really helped me to see how vibrant history can actually be. And he paired up with Evie Carter, who I'd been working with since 1993. And the two of them together were a fabulous duo, bringing a lot of thought and caring to the process of how do we weave the history of this barn and these people into this contemporary art piece.
The workers there had a keen interest in their own history, where they could show us their wall of names of former employees. They talked about a ghost that was in the place. They could conjure up employees from the past and tell you stories about driving through snowstorms or bus crashes. I immediately liked the people that we met when we got there. The space was great because it had strong smells and there was grease and it seemed slightly dangerous, and there was old technology like acid baths and big chains that moved around engines and tools that they actually forged there. There were things there that you wouldn't see today, like offices buried in the basement. That just, it had kind of an organic sense that these things grew after, 100 years. In today's ergonomic offices, you don't see things like a guy crammed behind boxes way in the back of a basement behind a cage or talking through a tube up to another floor. It was especially interesting because it didn't exist just in paper records. You had a feeling like you could go there and learn a lot about the past just from talking to everybody who was still there.
I was introduced to other people who had, unbeknownst to me, but kind of quite apart from me, had been doing the same thing with Hannah, and also had their little package of work that they had done. And we all met at Memorial Auditorium to kind of share our packages with one another, and we learned each other's work. And I found that challenging to. I just found that challenging to. Watch what someone did and be able to incorporate that into me well enough to be able to kind of be a part of that, this mass movement and people wishing people around.
This is what Leslie made. So both toes are facing that way after you've been here, and this rotates in. Boink, boink, boink. Trip, rondo, lunge.
Oh, is that what you do usually?
Let's reverse these two things that we know, and then we partner up and do them A and B together, A1 and A2 together, and A1 and 2 reversed together.
I step on my right first or on my left?
I think you're right.
Together. Ready, go. On the
I joined the Bus Barns after the initial group had choreographed some material. I felt a really strong sense of community. There were so many people involved. It seemed really like focused. Everybody was focused.
The opportunity to actually teach and be taught by people was something I hadn't thought about that was really valuable to me, not just the actual dancing, but it felt like the process of sharing the information was really interesting and was really informative. And then as we got closer, we started to bring in the elements of what the piece was about and the other layers, because we just worked as the movement ensemble. And just amazing to see something of that scale come together, like the layers and the layers and the layers, and give it a framework.
And shoulders way up, point down at the ground, and slide slowly, lots of pressure. If you're trying to get...
Roll them. Wow. Out. Draw the hand in. Wow. Step. Out. Draw the hand in. Wow.
Step right.
Step left. And go. Step, step. Back, go. Arm. Step, step, step. Right foot. We'll review this on Tuesday and Thursday, but Tuesday and Thursday I also need to teach you one more thing. This Tuesday you're going to learn Jen's, and this Thursday you're going to learn John's. All right? It's a lot.
The perpetually moving ensemble was a group of people I wanted to have constantly moving, much like when one travels from point A to point B. You're always moving.
That's intense.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear to me.
All right. Here's what you're supposed to be doing now, El.
We walked around the barns and they looked large and dirty and old and oily and not a place that I envisioned dancing particularly.
So let's just sort of walk through it and then we'll dance. Just spatially walking.
The meaning of the movement came together when I went there. To me, it's about passing, people passing and crossing and connecting and detaching and people's lives spilling onto, one another, and by accident or because you're stuck close to them on the bus, and maybe somebody has a cold and they cough on you, and you get their germs or whatever, or you can hear somebody's conversation with their grandmother and it's deeply personal. And it made me think about how we're all kind of constantly moving and we bump into each other, and then how do you react to that? And a lot of the dancing was about that. Sometimes you'd bump into someone while you're dancing gracefully across the concrete.
Sarah and I were in a relationship with the trio, being the other part.
Sarah is in the midst of the trio. You're out there, but you're doing the same timing as Sarah's.
Waiting for the bus, the hands are like this when you're going towards your partner.
You mean the first walk?
Exactly.
Going towards your partner. What is key is if we use this whole big space, that we continue to stay connected to each other.
Right.
Okay, Rob.
Yeah, it was just the walls.
I don't know. It was a mistake.
So I remember the first time we went to the site, and I didn't know what to expect at all. I knew that it was going to something to do with buses. And then here are these beautiful old brick buildings with these smells and cracked pavement and nooks and crannies, and it was really exciting and captivating and kind of strange all at once, of like, wow, I'm gonna dance here on this pavement where these buses are maybe gonna run me over, or who knows what. But it was exciting in that too, and like, so how do I dance around these cracks and not break my ankle, or what does it make me feel like having the noise of the cars going by and the buses coming in the middle of our rehearsal, or and to know, I don't know, kind of what normally was the movement that went on in this place, and then what was the movement that we were bringing to it, and how did that connect.
Is this what we're doing while we're here? I mean, I want to sort of be in character, so I'm actually dancing now.
Yeah, you're
right?
dancing. Yeah.
Okay.
We stand.
So what
here.
are all,
We're
not all
gonna.
talking,
We
right?
get here like this,
This is helpful.
and we turn around. Ready? Go. Okay, go. Quiet Barn. Improvisation Alley. Gap. Tent. There's a tent there. All right, just for your directions.
Upstage?
Upstage.
No, we start that way.
Downstage.
I collaborated on the Bus Barns as a musician, a composer, and an instigator of soundscapes.
So you're not over there on the wall 2 and 4, just 4?
No, just 4.
What's there 2?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Nothing. I should tell you that.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a person there.
Right. Well, we weren't going to have any persons for your group anyway. It's going to be for Selena. Well, that was what the impression I had. You don't want no music, no mo.
I've always really liked working with nature, and nature was right there. There was the human nature and there was the nature, and they were somehow morphing into each other because of the kind of the slow slide into chaos for the barns themselves.
Let me just tell you, and then I'll show you something. Okay. I'll start over here. This is where the names go. Yeah. And there is a small area around the corner that's maybe, 6 inches wide. Oh, good. Use that. Yeah. Okay. Are you expecting to be able to get all of the names in that panel from here we go. Names. Names and around the corner. Okay. So we got John Smith, Dots, Mary Jones, whatever. And if I can't get the Y in the Mary, it'll come around the it'll come around the corner here, or it'll come up. There are easily 147 names. Art is the core of our most intimate being, as part of the nature of things, and surely, as is a tree, a lake, a cloud, when we ignore it, even the spectators, we deaden ourselves in this brief transit. Now, I would like to see over here, between the second, third windows. And I'd like to enlarge the word art is the transit. The art is the would be larger. The rest of it would be a little bit, considerably smaller, and then transit would be larger again. So that at a distance you're reading art as the transit, and then maybe, in reality, all you have to do is walk up closer, or maybe not even walk up closer to read the entire thing. Yeah, I'd like to be able to read it from here.
My good fortune was to be able to ride a bicycle in the project, and whenever I have an opportunity to break out one of these old machines and ride it, it's always of interest to me. public transport and the changes that it went through with the mass production and mass infusion of the automobile back in the 1930s and 1940s has always interested me. Right after the Second World War, it seems like mass transport took a huge dive. So to be able to participate in a project that kind of reminisced and focused on what I consider to be the golden era of mass transport here in the United States really interested me.
There's a yellow dotted line that we're laying down on the asphalt that will lead the audience. The audience comes in and they're on their own. They're going to get a map, they're going to get a schedule, and there's no guide or anything like that. Over here in the nook of this brick building is a puppet show. That's called the Quiet Barn. That barn will be empty. That's where those of you who are dressed in white are going to spend a great deal of your time. It's going to be covered with wood chips. Pigeons fly in and out. There's cloth hanging. There's trees. There's a house, etc., etc.
We were supposed to be very still and slow, and I had time periods where I was going to be in there for an hour, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's just going to be excruciating. But it ended up being amazing. That was one of my favorite places to be because it became a meditation. It was such a sacred place with the chimes and how large it was, and it was a dream world, and to become a part of that dream world was really amazing. And it was hard to break out of it, actually, at the end of the day. You kind of want to continue on with that feeling.
And now...
No, I'm a salesperson.
What's going to be here is all of this is covered with sod, grass.
So they look in through the doorway?
They look in through the doorway. They do not come in.
Is this going to be the white people's room?
Yes,
also?
this is one of your rooms.
Okay.
And this is where you work alone, unless it's Essa and Finn who work together. And maybe Maya, I assign Maya with Hannah. Yeah. Allow there to be a development of something that you're getting involved in, that maybe you don't finish your task, or maybe you decided as you sat down to do this that you were going to get everything lined up around the edges, or you were going to bundle this thing to that thing, and then something in you made you change your mind and your direction and follow that. It's far more interesting for you to follow that desire. There was something about that room that was very mysterious and somehow held the history of that space and those men in those three walls there. We brought in elements that were very contradictory to that space. Sod, grass, soft ground on which to stand barefoot while you handled sticks and stones and bones and feathers and dirt and string, full of reverence. This corner here, from the window to the right, all the way down, are people's names written. Here is an embankment forest of quotes on sticks, just a ton of quotes. When Evie and John and I took a tour of the barns with Jim Raymond, he made sure to show us this little corner where the men who worked in the washing barns would come around the corner, take a break from their work, maybe have a smoke, talk, tell stories, and they would, all of the initials of all of the men, whoever worked in that barn,
were scratched there on the brick.
72. He's tall. He's the guy who gave us the tour of the building. That's Jim Raymond.
It is quite a corner. It's still there. They've managed to include it in their restoration of the building.
And one of the readers will always be here, and there'll be a list of names that they're going to be reading off, which is the same names that are at the other corner. But this is sort of the calling out of the names.
I placed these 2 long, thin tables made by Dave. One had corn in it, and one had water in it, next to these pits where the mechanics would change the fluids in the buses. And we also put trees and brush in those pits coming up out of them, so that there was that contrast between what those pits were used for and how we then highlighted them and highlighted the barn by putting these very sensory tables and objects next to these pits. I also really liked what happened when I stood there, and my senses just seemed to open up greatly. Hearing the water flowing, and smelling the trees, and smelling the grease, and seeing the grease, and seeing the corn, and touching the corn, and touching the water. It was all a very heightened environment.
And this is where all your instructions are hanging there, color-coded. And the audience gets to put them on here 7 at a time and watch the dance that you're going to do here. Okay? All right? So that when your instructions get hung up, even maybe while they're getting hung up, you can turn to each other and say, okay, well, how are we going to begin this one? Clump together, up close to the audience, away from the audience, those very basic things, okay? And maybe you don't even have to choreograph what shape you're in. It's more about where you are, where you physically are.
Are people passing through here?
Can we make them dance with us?
You can't make them dance with you.
Can we try to incorporate them into the dance?
You can incorporate them. But they may, spit on you.
I'm from Vermont, and Vermont issues, I feel like, they really hit close to home. Small companies being bought out by larger companies, it's a very discouraging thing to me. I think that what I actually experienced was more of a community thing, like interacting with a lot of different people that I normally wouldn't have come into contact with. Older people, younger people, people my own age.
Have you figured out your beginning and your ending? Ready? Here goes the gong. Gong!
I had recently moved into Burlington from living in the country and being a commuter, and made that choice largely to get out of my car, because we don't have a public transportation system that can support living in the country without being in my own car all the time. And I didn't like the mindset I got into. When I bike or walk or drive by the bus barns now, I look and I wonder, when are they going to tear that part down? And I see the words on the building that we painted there, and it's very moving to me to have been part of it and to have that memory imprinted in me, and imprinted on that building for me and on those grounds. And I look at them and I just have these images of beauty and of silliness and of happenstance, and it makes the place more vibrant for me. It's no longer just concrete and bricks.
The sweeping for me was twofold. One, extremely practical. There was a lot of gravel all over the asphalt, and I knew I was going to be running and jumping and turning quickly, and I wanted to diminish the possibilities of slipping on the gravel as much as possible. So we swept for that reason. And there was also something very symbolic about sweeping, cleaning the surface of this space, preparing it for its new life as affordable housing.
Look at our gestures and how we are, and are we all, if there are a few of us standing in it, are we in the same position in a very subtle way? We are or we aren't. And that's played off against these huge buildings where this giant work went on these giant machines. So on the one hand, it was subtle, and the other hand, it was very large.
As you move through the site, everybody was doing their part, and you were part of that group. And so as the green group danced through the barn, I remember there was a moment where, I mean, that was so beautiful, and you guys were coming through, and then the white group was mixing in, and I think then I forget her name, but the woman with the red,
Diane.
and she's spidering around, and it was just so amazing. It was just really, it felt really good to be part of this amoeba. We were all working together to make it happen.
So I'm Dave Severance, and I do a lot of the set work for Hannah on these pieces because she's my sweetheart, and she makes me do it. And the set was really big because there was just so much stuff, so many parts to it, and it just took a huge amount of time.
Upstairs in the first level lines of Barry to Montpelier were collected in cash. A passenger paying 10 cents if they were riding anywhere within Barry or Montpelier, but if they went from Barry to Montpelier, it was 20 cents.
We read poems or parts, snippets about transportation. Then one of our stations was that we stood by a corner of the bus barns where some of the workers had etched their names in the brick wall. And we had a long list of the workers who had, over the years, who'd been a part of the bus barns. And just reading the names over and over was such a moving experience for me.
Arnold E. Furness, Homer L. Guile.
In this greasy industrial washing barn, I put a bed. The viewer listened to the stories that were being read in that bed with a different way of hearing.
The ride split into two groups. The buses were stoned, tires were slashed, and one was firebombed. All by white mobs. One of the places where I sat was in a bed, or all the writers, we took turns alternating reading from a bed. And the audience could kind of drift through the bus barns, and they had an opportunity to discover things. And so people would just kind of float in, and if they wanted to, they could sit down around the bed and listen to one of the readers read something. I was in a writer's group, and we got together at Eddie Carter's house, and we had these long discussions about what the bus has meant to us in our lives, and talking about the bus as a metaphor. And it was fascinating because everybody had these emotional connections to buses.
At one point I was standing there reading the names. I could hear down the length of the whole bus barn one of the other readers reading something about transportation, and in between there were two musicians playing off each other and also playing off the sound of the names, and it was just a magical experience.
Reginald F. Gilder. Adrian J. Gingras.
I met with John S. I told him it was none of my business what he did on his own time. However, I was concerned that his discretions at this point were coming into the bus line.
Well, you see, I have a soft spot, a passion, you might say, for angel food cake. Oh, how much I love angel food cake. If you get me some, I will let you out.
This earth is just filled with gas. I mean, it's just all filled with it.
It is? Are you sure?
We're gonna
Don't
suck
use too
this.
much. Be careful.
Oh, this earth has got plenty of gas, and we're gonna suck it dry like an old prune.
I like to see stories about things. I think it's really the story that means a lot to me. In stories you can use symbolism, you can express all kinds of feelings that other people can relate to as they watch. And it can be really engrossing. And it's just really an entertaining way to learn things too.
It says, not a renewable resource.
Not
So,
a renewable. But there's plenty.
but there's not a renewable resource.
Nothing
but
to
there's plenty.
worry.
Nothing to worry.
Oh, they need more roads, so beep, 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 beep. Put on my hard hat, and we'll just zip over a few roads here.
And I liked it that the puppets could express things that wouldn't sound so good for me to just say to somebody. For instance, in the show about Punch and Judy, it was just kind of fun to have them evolve in their understanding of what was a nice way to live and what was good for them and what also brought their family together. That kind of ended up being a theme at the end of the story, was that a more beautiful environment and a place where they weren't zooming around in cars and traffic jams was a place where their family could be together.
Everybody knows once you have cars, you need a place to park them when you're not using them. So we gotta find a place to put the parking lot over there. Beep, beep. And buses, you gotta park your buses somewhere.
In performance art, it's the you are, the artist is the responder, the instrument. I want to respond to the whole environment of the setting and the particulars of the other people and what they're doing, and I really enjoy that opportunity.
I participated in the Bus Barns as a collaborating choreographer, leading a group of women clad in yellow, but mostly was involved with working off of the wall in a linear fashion, actually working on lines that were painted on the ground.
She works with a lot of humor, which I really appreciate and which I think draws a larger audience in. People tend to be pretty intimidated by modern dance, and I think rightly so. A lot of times it's pretty pretentious. And Selena has a way of sort of bringing it back to earth that I appreciate and that makes it really fun as a performer.
Site-specific work interests me for a number of reasons, one of which is the opportunity to place art in settings where you don't expect to see art.
I always enjoy, site-specific pieces and just putting yourself into any kind of neighborhood or, just a place other than a stage. And what happens, and kind of the cross connections between the art and the space itself, and the environment you're dealing with, dancing on various asphalt. It does something to the work. I feel like the way it weaves together. I really like that. The artwork starts to interact with life.
I think that it's an amazing thing for community members who aren't people who go to performances to be able to walk by and catch a glimpse of a performance. We were rehearsing next door to somebody's backyard where there was a crew of kids roughhousing. There's just an element of surrealism, but also an element of reality that sort of meet there.
Just reflecting back over the whole experience, we remembered all the times that we noticed the people in the windows across the street, or just driving by in their cars and seeing this bunch of people dancing around all around the property, and that was an important part of the project. Those people, even if they didn't officially get to come and see it or weren't officially involved, I think that it made a difference in the way that they see this place that's across the street from them, that they see every day, and then it lets them see it in a new light.
I like working in those situations where there's the element of unknown, where some kid walks through the rehearsal and stops in the middle of all of us and just looks at us, and it adds a challenge to being a performer that you don't get when you're in a staged environment.
I can't drive by or think about it or see it on a map without feeling what it felt like to be there and dance there. Everything on the ground was you can't clean it off, it's there. It was all covered in history.
I liked it that we talked in the beginning about how the Bus Barns area had been a center for the community. And back when there were trolleys and so on, the guys who worked there used to fix wagon wheels and so on for people in the community. And things were smaller, and it was a center of people's lives. It was very moving to me to start to feel the theme in the work that we were doing. I drive my car, I floor it down to Barrie and back every day for my job. And I just think, well, I have to do these things. And I started thinking a whole lot more about what I have to do and what I don't have to do. And by the time we were finally performing it, I really felt what we were talking about community, about having transportation, which keeps communities together.
Robert W. Gordon, Ernest Hare.
What I really got out of it was a different sense for those people and that particular history and that particular place and that group of people. And I wasn't really I was expecting to get out this great experience of working with other artists, which was wonderful and fun, but
really, I think the thing that kind of stuck with me and stayed with me was the feeling about that place and those people. It was historical. And how much, in fact, they liked what we were doing, and how honored they were to have been seen and acknowledged for their contribution, even in the unusual ways which we were doing, and how tolerant they were of how we were approaching their place, which was being closed down, and kind of the sadness around it.
It was a real privilege working in the barns while the men were still working there. They made the emotional aspect of the piece.
Paul C. Foster, Bernard L. Frank, Craig E. Lewis, John P. Lyon, David K. Kent, Dean E. Harrington, Gifford Harrington, Kenneth H. LaCrosse, Chaz Martinez, Walter H. Maxey, Roger Marcoux, Ivo V. Mariatti, Octave A. Marriere, Edward J. Rockford, Lucien R. Saucier, William Schmidt, Roger Dusenbaum, Garrow, Milos Gentes, Jr., Mike Gilman, Dean Trombley, Leo Trombley, William Trombley, Ray Trombley, Bruce Turner, and Roger Barrett.
2, 3. When the radio was on, music that stimulated memory of times and places, complete with characters and stage sets. Memory so exact that every word of dialogue is recreated.
William Mitchell, Sam Tatro, William Tarian, Ken Bissett, Abe Birch, Charles Blaisdell, Raymond Brosseau, Dean Burgess, Reginald Gilman, Adrian Gingrich,
One of the things that really worked for me about this project was the opportunity to be with these men as they were finishing up their careers working for Vermont Transit. When people have poured their energy and skills into a job year after year after year, and all of a sudden that job is no longer there because of downsizing, larger corporations coming in, swallowing up smaller businesses having difficulty competing with these giant behemoths. It's very inhuman. And our experience in the barn with these men making this piece was a very human experience for which I'm very grateful.